So one of the things I've gotten to do on the Spectre Creative channel is tell a lot of stories. And I'm excited today because we're going to do the TwoBad story. And I'm excited about that because I haven't done a TwoBad video yet. A lot of the figures I've done stories about, I've already done an in-depth look at the Motu Classics figure. Well, with TwoBad, because he was a later figure, I haven't gotten to him yet. So with that, let's dive in and talk about the two-headed purple and blue orange vested menace hero, villain. Hey, however you see him is how you see him. But in the end, if you run into this guy, it's too bad. Oh, God, I know. The names in Motu are like ridiculous, right? All right, well, although he's not always given the same background or the same accessories or same vehicles to fly, he's a fan favorite. And not of this fan, I will tell you, and I'll explain why in a moment. But whether it's for comical relief or super genius powers, TwoBad shows up in almost all of the content. He's been in Filmation, he's been in 2000X. He wasn't in Revelation, though, I guess. Well, maybe he'll show up in there's a season 3. But he also appears in pretty much all the toy lines, although he hasn't been in Revelation or Origins. Okay, well, he was in Classics and he was in the original toy line. How about that? All right, we'll go with that. And he's had a few different backstories, and he's one of the more interesting characters, especially because he's got a toy body, unlike any other figure in the line. It's an extended long chest with 2 arms on swinging joints, and then 2 heads. So, like Ram Man, he's a different type of body, and this is because he follows what's called the toy ratio. By that I mean tooling equals sales. The more toy line sales, the more tooling it's given. And Masters of the Universe is a textbook example of the bell curve of tooling, where all the figures in the beginning of the line, very little tooling. In the middle, a ton of tooling. At the end, almost no tooling again. And this tends to be how a lot of lines are. And TwoBad, with that unique torso, required a lot of tooling, especially in the vintage line. In the vintage line, it also required unique arms and unique legs. We were lucky in Classics that we were able to reuse some parts, especially the furry shorts. Now, looking at TwoBad as a sort of motif, if you will, the idea of the two-headed monster, that's something that's been around for, well, hundreds and thousands of years. Greek mythology, Mesopotamian mythology, Aztec, there's a lot of two-headed and three-headed and seven-headed and multi-headed monsters out there. And part of it was taking this concept and just bringing it into Masters of the Universe, much like other things, like a barbarian motif, or a skeleton wizard, or, bee men. While there's a lot of people that are fans of this and love the monster aspect because, monsters are monsters are monsters, for me personally, TwoBad actually grossed me out. Kind of like the way Garbage Pail Kids did. I don't know if you were into Garbage Pail Kids when you were a kid, and I know this is, I'm diverting from talking about TwoBad here, but bear with me. Garbage Pail Kids made me nauseous. Most of them. I looked at them and I would feel nauseous. They would gross me out to that point. Even the ones that, I'm not showing some of the grosser ones here. I tried to find ones that weren't going to do that. So, TwoBad was like that too. Whenever I played with him as a kid, I don't know why. Maybe it was because of like the oozy goo of the skin. I also thought it was weird that he was always punching himself in the face because you could pull back the arms and let go and then they would fly forward and you could basically punch the other guy's face. So for some reason, this figure kind of made me feel like nauseous sometimes. So he didn't get played with that much, but he was a figure I owned and he obviously showed up in Filmation, and those who are fans of him, absolutely every right. It may just have been me. I don't know. Maybe other people felt that weird like dichotomy of 2 characters smashed together just somehow got to my stomach. I don't know. He got redesigned for 2000X, though, like you see here, and he was one of the cooler redesigns because, it really did stick with the original look. It just 2000X-ized it. More spikes, more armor, more teeth. Going back to the original line, outside of his appearance in Filmation, he didn't really have much of a storyline. The only official bio was that in the 1987 Licenser kit, which talked about him being super smart. He could outsmart even Skeletor because, get this, he had 2 heads, 2 brains. And that was really what was played up, was that he was a super smart plotting villain. In 2000X, like most of the characters, he got a brand new origin, and in this case, didn't keep the super smart aspect, but rather the tortured soul, where two bounty hunters, Tuvar and Badra, get it? Tuvar, Badra, get combined into TwoBad. This is how we picked it up in the classics bios, even giving the real name Tuvar and Badra as, who this originally was, and they're basically cursed for betraying Skeletor, or rather failing Skeletor, that he decides to take these two bounty hunters he hired, he's disappointed, and he smashes them together. Getting action figures of the individual characters that made up TwoBad suddenly became all the rage, and I'm sure 2000X probably would have gotten to it if time permitted, and so would have classics. And I've seen fan customs in all sorts of styles, vintage style, classic style. It's really cool, and honestly, this was absolutely on the list. We were talking about it as maybe a Comic-Con item, doing it as a two-pack. It didn't really make sense to sell them individually, so we were looking at ways to get to this, but, like a lot of things that happened that we didn't get to, we didn't get to. Let's see how that works. It's like an arborist eating its own tail. The things we didn't get to, we didn't get to. What always puzzled me, though, is if Skeletor had the magic spell ability to combine two people together, why didn't he do this all the time? Like, he doesn't pull out a magic artifact to do this. He just does this in the show. He just, he's pissed off that the two bounty hunters, Tuvar and Badra, didn't accomplish their goal. They didn't really, betray him. Could he combine other things could he take, an airplane and a banana and suddenly create the banana plane? How does Skeletor have this ability, and why does he only use it once? Are these the things that keep you up at night? It's like in Pacific Rim when suddenly they remembered they had swords in the last 5 minutes of the final battle. It's like this motif in pop culture. Anyway, so whether or not other people could become TwoBad, the character was pretty much set. And there's not that many ways you can do him as far as variants, and doing variants of secondary characters isn't always the greatest idea. So one idea that the 2000X line had to try to get more use out of that tool was to just flip-flop the colors, which I have to say is actually pretty cool, considering a lot of the variants. Well, look up Disco Skeletor if you need to know more about that. I'll put a link at the end of this video if you don't want to look it up. So yeah, whether you, keep the blue on the right or the right on the left and the purple in the middle, it's, two characters squished together. Maybe it looks awesome to you. Maybe it makes you semi-nauseous like me. I don't know. I can't even explain it. But I did wind up really liking the character, even though he made me queasy. Because, who doesn't love their toys? One more thing to hit on is the origins of TwoBad. He started off very differently. In this original concept art, the character was called Schizo, and he was going to have both a good head and a bad head. The idea that he could be a heroic warrior or an evil warrior. And while this definitely has merit, calling the character Schizo, there was a realization that that name isn't probably going to go over too well. So the character was changed to TwoBad guys. But leave it to fans to immortalize concept art in plastic and make customs of even figures like that. And much like Battle Bones that started off as Dem Bones, but the name was felt it was just a little inappropriate, or the original name for Merman, which was Seaman. Thank you, South Park. Yeah, so names do get changed a lot, and Schizo became TwoBad, and when it was TwoBad, well, both heads became evil heads, and the whole idea that he was going to be an evil warrior and a heroic warrior at the same time, out the window. Instead, he was a super smart villain who could think even Skeletor, because everyone needs to outthink Skeletor, at least someone should. So even though he was, some kind of a dummy in the 2000X show, hey, whether he's a dummy, a smarty, a monster, a hero, a villain, he's TwoBad. He's hugely popular, and you just don't see colors like that much in the toy aisle. The blue, the purple, the orange, it works. What can we say? Whether he's your favorite toy or your least favorite, if you owned him, well, too bad. You knew I was going to say that. You knew how I was ending that. All right, if you like this video, please do share it with others. It's the best way to show support for this channel, and it is most appreciated. Thank you so much. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.